Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a Q&A. I asked you guys on Instagram to submit any questions that you had for me, and they were all kind of in the post-grad, finding a job, living in DC realm. So that's what today's video is going to be about. Quickly, if you're new here, my name is Amy Rauch. I am 22 years old. I live here in Washington, DC. I have a full-time job as a graphic designer downtown and make videos all about my lifestyle, from business professional outfit inspo to coffee runs, Trader Joe's hauls, and everything in between. So if you guys would like to stick around, definitely make sure to subscribe. And yeah, like I said, I'm just going to be pulling up questions from my Instagram story. I'm not going to share usernames just in case anybody wanted to stay anonymous, but the first question I'm going to answer is how to manage finances on a small first post-grad job. Something that's really helped me is having a written out plan. So basically I took my paycheck after taxes and took that number, subtracted my rent from it. So whatever's left from that, I take and divide up into what I want to be spending. So I know that every month I want to pay off a portion of my student loans, I want to move money to savings, and I want to add money to my 401k. So I took that number, subtracted all of the amounts that I wanted to put in per month, and then whatever's left is what I know I can comfortably spend for the month. Obviously, I wouldn't spend every dollar left. That's worked really well for me. I keep a finance log of every purchase that I make and kind of put that in a spreadsheet per week just to make sure I'm staying on track, or if I'm off track, seeing why I'm going off track. Like this month, for example, I am spending way over my budget, but I had a lot of bigger purchases to make. I had to buy some furniture for my apartment. I wanted to buy Christmas gifts for my friends and family. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess my biggest tip is sitting down and creating a plan and sticking to it. I also think it's perfectly okay to ask for help. I really trust my dad and his perspective of finances, so I kind of ran down my breakdown of my budget through him and was like, does this seem okay? Like, do you think I'm giving myself enough wiggle room here? Do you think I'm putting enough money into here, you know? But I think it's a good idea to get a second set of eyes on that, whether that's like an accountant that your family has, somebody in your family that you trust, maybe a professor. If you're in like finance or accounting or some major like that, your school might have resources. I feel pretty confident with the way that I'm dividing my money now, but I think something that I still need a lot of help on is taxes. And that's something that in the new year, I'm looking to find a really great specialist in DC. I'm willing to pay money to have someone sit down and explain to me how freelance taxes work and how all of my taxes, especially this year, will kind of come into play, because as you guys might know, I lived in North Carolina. My parents live in Virginia. I now have residence in DC, and I have streams of revenue from all of those, and that doesn't include YouTube, which is technically based in California, and it's freelance and it's not taxed beforehand. So that's something that I need help on because I don't want to do that wrong. So I've been rambling for way too long on this question, but creating a plan that works for you and your budget, sticking to it, and asking for help if you need it, I think is the best way to be financially stable in your first job out of college. The next question is, do you want to get your master's? As of right now, I don't. That could change in the future, but I don't think it's entirely necessary for the design field. So as of right now, no. Which cities were you contemplating post-grad? So I was actually really lucky, and I went into senior year kind of knowing that I'd be coming back to the company that I'm working for now. If you didn't know, I interned with them last summer, and on my last day, my boss sat me down and basically gave me a verbal offer saying that they would follow up with a written offer in January or so. So I went into senior year 99% sure that I was coming back to this company in DC. So I didn't really have that contemplation. I didn't want to get too comfortable and rely on it just because it was a verbal offer and nothing was written or signed. But I went into my senior year expecting to come back to DC. I think that if I hadn't ended up in DC, I would have really considered New York, just because so many of my friends moved there and it's such a good area for creative agency work that I think that would have been the kind of natural path that I was pushed down. But honestly, who knows? Definitely not me. How did you find your job? Any tips regarding interviews? So I found my job through my university's job portal, actually. It was like a random listing. I was applying to so many internships last summer. I was so frustrated that I wasn't hearing back from any of them because I felt qualified. I thought that I was a good candidate, and I felt like nobody was giving me the time of day. And I saw my current job's job posting. It seemed kind of random, but it was in DC, it was paid, and I was like, honestly, whatever. It was a pretty easy application. It was just like a cover letter and my portfolio, I think. So it wasn't anything too crazy for the initial application. So I just kind of submitted it, didn't think much of it, and then a couple weeks later got a phone call to interview, went in, ended up absolutely loving the team, loving the work that the creative side of the office did, and eventually got the internship after a couple of rounds of interviews, and then interned and went back full-time after I graduated. There were a couple other questions about how to find jobs or internships in college. I think utilizing your school's career center is absolutely key. I'm super biased because I worked at Elon's Student Professional Development Center. So I firsthand saw all these recruiters come in and employers trying to find Elon grads to hire or Elon students to hire for internships. And that's not special to Elon. Like, these employers and recruiters, yes, we're looking for Elon grads, but every single company goes to specific schools for different reasons. I know my company that I work for now recruits from like 3 or 4 schools very heavily that aren't Elon because they have really great real estate programs or, you know, whatever that may be. So if an employer is already going to your university, they're looking for students that you meet those qualifications for, if that makes sense. So I think that's a really big one. If you're not enrolled in a university though, I think LinkedIn can be really great, reaching out to people for informational interviews, kind of hearing about how they got started in the industry, their job position, what their daily tasks are and stuff like that. If you get a response to do an informational interview, definitely don't ask for a job right off the bat. I feel like that would not go well. It probably will come off super tacky. Just try to be very genuine and asking questions about them and their experience and how that can, I guess, benefit you, but like, don't make it seem like you're doing it to benefit you. If there's any conferences in your area, like whatever your closest city is, look up what the next conference is for your industry. So for me, that might be a design conference or public relations, marketing, you know, something slightly in that realm. Those type of events always have networking panels and stuff like that. It's a great way to meet people. Sometimes employers send recruits there to find people as well. So I think that could be really useful. I think connections are honestly more important than your actual resume, which sucks because you put in all this work and you're so qualified, but if a recruiter or an employer knows someone personally, they're going to get the upper hand at the end of the day. So I'd say just put yourself out there, meet with people, connect with people, and then use that to showcase how qualified you are in hopes that that gets you somewhere. I don't know if that's helpful. Hopefully it is. Yikes. What are your favorite spots to go to in DC? I'm still learning the city. Same. I've lived like outside of DC basically my entire life, but it's very different to grow up in Northern Virginia and to actually live in DC. So I am also still exploring the city. I also don't have a ton of extra funds, so I try to eat in most of the time. I try to limit myself to like 1 or 2 drinks when I go out, you know, things like that. Like, I don't have a ton of spending money to always be doing things, but I obviously do have some favorite spots in the city. As far as bars, I love Bar Deco. It's in Chinatown. It's right by the Capital One Arena. I feel like they have really good drinks, especially in the summer. They have frozen lemonade that is very good, and they have a rooftop, great apps. Just a good place to be. I really like it. There's also a lot of really good beer gardens in DC, which I love, just the more relaxed vibe of a beer garden. You can go there with friends after work or on a weekend and just hang out, lay out on chairs or couches or whatever it may be. I'd say my 2 favorites that I've been to in DC so far are Wonder Garden and Dacha. That could change though because I haven't been to all of them yet, but those are my favorites so far. As far as food, I love Busboys and Poets. There's a ton of locations across the city. Good food, good price. As far as brunch goes, I really like Bluestone Lane, specifically the one in Foggy Bottom. Not a huge fan of the one in Georgetown, just because there's not as much room to sit. And then for dinner, I think my favorite restaurant's Hamilton. It's like right downtown. It's the same ownership as Old Ebbitt and a couple other places, I think. But it's just such a cool place. I don't know. It's one of my favorites. If we're talking coffee, my favorite would probably be Zeke's. If you guys watch my Work Week in My Life, you know I live, breathe, die Zeke's coffee. Obviously Compass Coffee, and there's a really cute place in Southeast called Slipstream. I've only been there once, but coffee was good, brunch food was good, and it was very reasonably priced because it was more like cafe, less sit down, but really cute. There might be a second location as well, I don't actually know. And then as far as like other random places, my favorite shop in DC is probably Little Leaf. It's on S Street, I think, off of 14th. It's like a little plant store. I actually got this little cactus from there. It's not doing great, but that unfortunately is my fault and not theirs. Super cute store. Definitely look it up on Instagram if you are in the area and haven't been yet, or you're traveling to DC sometime soon. Love it. As far as museums, I think the Portrait Gallery is my favorite just because of the big atrium inside, and the third floor is very modern, which I really like. And then of the memorials, I think Jefferson is my favorite just because it overlooks the water and it's really nice at sunset and at night with the columns and stuff like that. I don't know. So those are my favorite spots so far. I'm sure in a year from now I will have completely different answers, but for right now, those are like my favorite spots in the city. Somebody asked, how do you become responsible enough to live on your own, with the like little emoji with a squiggle face that looks kind of sick, and I thought that was so funny. I don't know. I don't think that looks the same for everyone. For me, being responsible to live on my own kind of means being mostly financially independent and handling things on your own, I guess. So for me, when I turned 16, I got a job, I started saving money. I tried to slowly peel back from my parents being the financial providers in my life, if that makes sense. I'd say today I'm like 90 to 95% entirely financially independent. Obviously, I'd like to get that to 100%, but I'm really lucky and my parents do pay for some small things still. The biggest probably being my dad still pays for my car insurance, which I do think I need to start doing. That's something that I feel like is 100% my responsibility, even though I don't actively have my car with me. I'm also still on my dad's healthcare, but it doesn't cost him any more to have me on his healthcare. And frankly, his healthcare is way better than the healthcare that my job would provide. And I'd be paying for it from my paycheck. So it just makes more sense, especially because it doesn't cost him anything additional to have me on his plan to keep doing that until I'm 26. But I think the more you can scale back from being reliant on others for money, the more responsible you are. So if you're really young and in high school still, maybe that's stopping accepting allowance. I know I didn't really feel comfortable accepting allowance from my parents when I turned 16 and I started working. I just felt really weird about accepting money from them. So instead of getting a weekly allowance, we agreed that they would fill up my car with gas once a month, or, you know, things like that you can just slowly scale back from. Also, handling things on your own. If you have a doctor's appointment, call and make it yourself. If you need to reach out to your leasing manager, or, you know, like, I don't know, things like that, just handling them yourself. It's okay, obviously, to ask for help or ask someone to proofread an email or, you know, whatever that may be, but taking accountability for those things and starting to manage them yourself, I think, is what makes you responsible. I don't know. I think it's so different for everyone. It's really hard to say if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be responsible enough to move out on your own. And everybody's in different situations. So I don't think I'm qualified to tell you when you're responsible enough to move out, but I think starting with being financially independent and kind of managing things on your own and being sustainable on your own is a really great place to start. The next question says, tips about relocating to DC fast. Also, how are you doing? How's your job? Love you. Love you too. Tips about relocating to DC fast. I would say secure a job in an apartment. The rest will probably fall into place. Second part of that question, how am I doing? I'm doing really well, overwhelmed with like work and YouTube and all of my commitments that I have put on myself, but really good. I'm really happy with everything in my life. I'm happy with my apartment. I love my job. I love the people that I'm surrounding myself with, and I think I'm doing relatively well considering the big post-grad adjustment is such a big adjustment. So I'd say I'm doing really well. I think I'll be doing even better a year from now, just because I'll be more adjusted, more confident in what I'm doing, and hopefully a little bit more balanced. But I think as a whole, I'm doing really well. The next question was, how challenging was it to find an apartment in DC? Do you have any advice? I actually made an entire video about this with all of my tips and tricks for finding an apartment in DC specifically. So I will have a card up here to it and link down below and all of that good stuff. I would say it was challenging, not impossible. I think it's definitely a lot easier to find housing in DC compared to New York. I don't really know how competitive housing is in LA or Chicago or any other city, but I'd say DC is not nearly as competitive as New York. Like watching my friends go through housing in New York and having to deal with brokers and just a ton of random fees and competition, I didn't experience that. I'd say the hardest part for me was finding the right fit, but not necessarily things that were out of my control, like brokerage or competition and things like that. So if you want to hear more about that, like I said, we'll have the video linked up there, down below, all of that good stuff. And yeah, there's a couple questions about my dream job and location, like if I want to stay in DC forever, if I want to move. And honestly, I have no idea. I kind of tell people I plan to be in DC for the next 2.5 years, and then it goes somewhere else for a little bit, kind of get out of the DC Nova area, and then come back and settle down here, raise a family, you know, all that good stuff. But honestly, I have no idea. That could completely change. Also, part of the reason I just want to move is because of my own pride, like being raised here. I feel like I didn't do anything extraordinary by moving here post-grad, and I have this like weird pride that I need to move somewhere else and do something drastic just to prove. My camera stopped recording, but basically I was saying I just have this stupid pride that I need to move somewhere kind of drastic just to prove that I can, which is so dumb. But I do want to move somewhere else after DC for a little bit. I don't know if that'll happen. If I'm really happy here in 3 years, why would I move? Or, you know, I don't know. I also don't know what my dream job is. I love my job right now, but I know that it's not the place that I'll be forever. I think after working here for another 2.5 years or so, I would like to work part-time at a creative agency, like a little bit more boutique, maybe 20 hours a week, working on 1 or 2 clients, and then freelance on the side, probably in the real estate industry still, just because there's honestly so much money in real estate design, and I really enjoy it. I think I'm getting good at it, and I think I'll continue to get good at it. And I'll have connections in the DC area. So I don't know if I were to pick up and move, how those connections would travel, if that makes sense. Like it'd be very hard to freelance in New York, let's say, if all of my connections are here and the work that I would need to be doing is local. If that's like taking video and photos of events or buildings, or, you know, like local shops in DC doing PR for them, you know, like whatever that would be. If I have these connections in DC, it would be a lot more challenging, I think, to pick up and move to another city. So honestly, I have no idea what my dream job is, where my dream location is, how long I'll be here. I mean, I could get a dream offer in a 1.5 years that I can't turn down in, you know, Nebraska and go there for a couple of years. Or I could see myself staying here for the next 5 years and then maybe moving to North Carolina again. Or, you know, like there's so much that's completely out of my control that I can't even start to answer that question because I have no idea, basically. And yeah, cheers to that, I guess. The last question I'm going to answer, there were a couple of these, is basically how to cope with going from a full-time student to working a full-time job. And I think it's really hard because for me, and I think many others, obviously not everybody has the same experience. I was in education my entire life. You're in a schedule, you're being told what to do. Your whole life is education. So when that ends, it's almost confusing because for 18 years, give or take, you've been on this strict schedule that's pretty repetitive in terms of the same breaks. Like you almost always have summer break, you almost always have a spring break, a Thanksgiving break, a Christmas break, whatever that is. And I think it really comes in waves and flows. There's weeks where I feel great. I love my job. I love being in DC. I love post-grad life so much more than being in college. But then there's other weeks where I feel so overwhelmed. I feel overworked. I feel just so overwhelmed because I haven't had a break. And I realize it's because I just have never worked this long without a break per se. Like obviously I'm going home at night and having weekends and I have PTO that I could take. I'm not being overworked at my job, you know, but especially in the fall time, it's very ingrained in me that I have a fall break, I have a Thanksgiving break, and I have a Christmas break. And at Elon especially, our Thanksgiving break was like 10 days for absolutely no reason. So going home for Thanksgiving this year and then realizing that I only had 2 or 3 days off and I needed to get right back into it was almost out of body for me. Like I felt just like I needed to rest still, because that's what I've been doing every Thanksgiving for the last 18 years, if that makes sense. So I think it's just a really big adjustment, and being patient with yourself and realizing that this is kind of the new norm and eventually your body will kind of adjust to it. And it's okay if you need to take a day to like just have a mental health day, or take a day just to lay in bed or spend time with friends, you know, like doing what you need to do for yourself to adjust to the adjustment, I think is okay as well. And I think talking to other people about it really helps as well. I know I have a couple friends that I can just call and be like, I'm literally having a mental breakdown today. Like, are you free to talk on the phone? And just talking through it for like an hour and a half sometimes really does make a big difference in realizing that there's other people feeling the same way. Like, we're kind of all feeling the same thing, just in different locations in different cities, but it's all the same problems at the end of the day, and they're not really problems. It's just an adjustment to a new lifestyle, and eventually it'll just become second nature, if that makes sense. So I'm still in the adjustment. I think most of you guys watching probably are too, or about to enter it, just because of the demographic of this channel. But day by day, week by week, it gets done, all the work gets done, and I think making sure you're in a good job, you're in a good living situation, you like where you're living, like city-wise, apartment-wise, really does make a big difference. So just take baby steps every day, I guess, to make yourself happy, be patient with yourself, and, you know, it gets easier each day, I think. So we're all in this together, baby. I don't really have a good answer for this. So those are all the questions that I'm going to be answering in today's Q&A. Thank you guys so much for the support and asking such good questions on my Instagram. If you want to be a part of the next one, just follow me there. I'll post on my story from time to time. I don't know if you guys want to see more of these. If anybody cares, you know what the vibe is, definitely let me know. And yeah, with all that being said, I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.